Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the show. Before we get into the episode, I want to remind you that every week there are 2 brand new episodes of Have You Heard This available. One is right here for free wherever you listen to podcasts, and the second is a bonus episode for subscribers at patreon.com/Aaron Hertzog. If you like the show, or me, or my guest, it's a great way to show support for as little as $5 per month. If you're here because my guest sent you, then great news. I give half of the proceeds from all new subscribers this week to my guest as a way to say thanks for being on my show. So head on over to patreon.com/Aaron Hertzog and sign up for weekly bonus podcasts, a download of my stand-up comedy album, comedy videos, and more. The link is available in the description of the episode. Thanks again for listening, and on to the show. Rachele Friedland, thanks for being with me here on my podcast.
Hey, Aaron, you're so welcome.
It's great to have you here. And I am excited to talk to you about the terrible and awful things that you're going to bring to the podcast. I assume.
Yes, of course. It's not me talking about my Jewish grandma in the time of Passover without some tragedy.
Yeah.
So that is very apt.
What are why do we recline? Is that one of the, I don't know.
Yes,
I've been to
you're
Seder's.
so
good.
How do you know that?
Yeah, is bitter herbs. Why do we eat bitter herbs?
Oh, honey, absolutely.
What are the other 2 questions? I don't remember. There's 4, right?
Yes. Aaron, you're acing this test.
I've been to a few Passovers. What do you want to share the other ones? I don't.
Generally it's like, why is tonight different from other nights?
Oh yeah, that's like the simplest one that I missed.
It's a softball for sure. When it comes to Jews asking questions. Why is tonight different? Why do we eat the bitter herb? Why do we eat only matzah? Why do we recline?
Okay, I probably could have got those if you gave me some time, but I didn't want to waste precious.
No, and you know what? I only know
time.
it so freshly because I just said them out loud last night. If you asked me at any other point in the year, I'd be like, couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you.
Why do I
complain so much?
Oh,
one of the,
that is one of the, that's an alternate Passover. It's in like,
when you read between the lines, that's what you get.
Yeah. And that is why you eat the bitter herbs.
Mm-hmm.
So like it reminds your mouth not to complain as much. Can I say this? I don't know.
It was great. Actually, last night when we had, I hosted a very large Seder for those of you listening. And last night when we had to dip the bitter herb into the salt water and take a bite, you heard everyone go, oh, and it was just like a collective moment of like, fuck, why are we doing this?
Why? Yeah. Just a nice reminder of suffering once a year,
and you must. And the way that each Haggadah is written with like, to remind ourselves of the enslaved Israelites and their tears, it's all very dramatic and camp. It just made me wish that it was a drag Seder. Like, I wish that I wasn't hosting it and it was drag Seder, because I think it would have been way more fun. But
just really turn it up.
Turn the volume all the way up. That's a pitch for next year.
That is good. Yeah, you did the was there a theme to it, or
no, so there was no theme, but what I found was this feminist Haggadah, and within the feminist Haggadah they mentioned putting an orange on the Seder plate, and it is like, it comes off the story of a man saying that women don't belong in positions of power within Judaism, so much as an orange doesn't belong on a Seder plate.
Oh, okay. So so you put it there as a symbol.
Yeah.
And this all does tie in to what we are here to talk about. We're not just kvetching about.
No, we're not just kvetching. We're not just vamping up top about Passover.
Which let our listeners know what you brought to me.
What I'm bringing to you today, and what I'm very excited to dig into, is the story of my grandmother. And specifically this moment in my grandma's life and like my whole family's life where we learned that any money my family thought they had was actually stolen from them in a Ponzi scheme.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is heavy.
It sucks.
Is it a famous Ponzi scheme?
No,
or just a lowbrow? Nobody ever heard about it.
stayed within Long Beach city limits. I'll tell you that much.
Ooh, wow.
Didn't even make it to LA County.
Local Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they catch the Ponzi schemer?
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
Yeah. But so all the money's gone, right? You
the
don't
money
get
is gone.
paid restitution or anything.
No restitution. Like no. So I went to the hearing for this woman.
Okay.
Carol Peterson. I'm not afraid to name names.
Yeah, please name names. This is now a true crime podcast as well as a comedy podcast, which is checking all the boxes.
Yeah,
it's going straight to the top of the charts.
So I went to her hearing because there was a chance that maybe my family would get restitution, but the judge reads out everyone's name and their dollar amount that they would potentially get, which is paid back, mind you, in $20 increments once a month.
Like forever.
Yeah. And she's in her mid 60s at this point, so it's like, what's the point of this? My family's name is not called. Because there's no, my grandma and my mom had been investing with Carol for so long that there was like no more paper trail of them, or like they got in so early that by the time there was some sort of paper trail, they weren't part of it.
Whoa. So it wasn't even like officially part of the whole thing. No. Well, that stinks. That had to be like a shitty moment. Like they get to the end and you're just like, yeah.
Well, and so, and I'll give some more information, then we can maybe back it up. But up until that point, my whole family is in denial that this is even happening. My whole family being my mom and my grandma, because they've known Carol for 30+ years.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And just like built like trust.
Yeah. Built so much trust in
so-called trust,
quote unquote. Yeah. So the whole time they're like, is this real? Is this even real? Could this even really be happening?
Mm-hmm.
And then come to, I think the denial really stuck around until we got to the trial and she was convicted.
Well, maybe they didn't call your family's name because Carol properly invested your family's money. And it wasn't part of the scheme.
And then just redistribute it to other people. And she was like, that part was true, but it's still gone.
God.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So it's very sad. And I think what makes it even more sad is that this happened. We first learned of Carol being investigated for some sort of fraudulent activity in 2018.
Okay.
And 2017, 2018. And at that point, my grandma's 98. So it's like, you're so old. You shouldn't have to do anything. I think
you shouldn't, at that point of your life, you shouldn't have any more. There should be no work. You shouldn't have work.
No,
you shouldn't
have
work. To do work.
Only Judge Judy.
You shouldn't have to think about anything. You shouldn't have to sign any papers. All of those things should be done. You shouldn't have to go to court.
No. And she didn't.
Is there a cutoff for jury duty? This is kind of off subject, but is there an age cutoff?
A great question. I don't know. I couldn't tell you the last time my grandma got summoned.
Yeah.
But she would have loved to facilitate her
serve her civic duty. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Right. So the larger picture is that I'm working on material about my grandma and her life because she lived to 101, which is a very long time. And I kind of think about how I'm 31 now. And, by your 30s, you've accumulated some sort of experiences, and you've hit some sort of low point, I think, where you're like, how do I recover from this? But then you do, and you're like, all right, and then I move on. But then my grandma did that 3 times. You know what I mean? Like 3+
over the
times.
Course of over 100 years.
Right. And to have her third act really be, the pitfall of it all is
just
tragic.
Such like just when you think everything is it's just smooth sailing, and
right.
The golden years as they call them,
they were not. So it was very hard and very traumatic, and of course something that is still having repercussions today, even though we're not seeing them as much because my grandma's now passed. We're not so worried about like how to pay for her health care anymore, or her house or her caregivers or anything like that. But there's still my mom.
Yeah.
I don't think I can legally say her age per her request.
NDA
signed with my
illegal,
mom.
Yeah, with your mom. Yeah.
She's still gonna get old, and don't tell her I said that, but like she's still gonna get old, and we don't really know what we're gonna do there anymore. And so it's just created a lot of uncertainty. And even with my sister and I, where my mom would always tell us like, don't worry, like there will be some sort of money for you either when your grandma dies
point,
or when yeah. And now that's gone, which is
it's all been based on a lie, thanks to Carol. What's her name? Carol what?
Carol Peterson.
Carol Peterson. We're going to put her name on blast as many times as possible.
Absolutely.
During this. Yeah.
It was great. I actually did a moth storytelling about this. And it was wonderful because people afterward came up to me and they're like, fucking Carol. I was like, yeah, fucking Carol. That's right.
Yeah.
So God. I'm at this point of writing material about my grandma and her life and who she was growing up, because she grew up during the Great Depression, which is also wild to me that we have this woman who is born before refrigerators were invented and died getting spam emails from Marshalls, like on an iPad.
The amount of just technological progress in people around that age, born like around the beginning of the 1900s is ridiculous.
Yeah, born the year before penicillin was invented. Like there were no antibiotics. It was, matzo ball soup and a prayer.
Yeah.
And
now there's computers and you can have anything.
Loved her iPad. She thought it was incredible.
That rules.
It was great. We did ask her, like, what do you think is the most impressive, technological advancement? I really thought it was going to be refrigerators because she loved to save food, but she did say her iPad was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Which is
good.
Sweet.
She didn't stop with the in the 1930s or whatever,
sure. Yeah. No, yeah. There were also cars. Cars were an option, and planes and all sorts of stuff.
They were all new during her lifetime.
Yeah.
She saw every single thing, basically.
Every single thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just about. So I've been working on some material about that and like trying to give a good picture of like who she was and, who she is as like this old woman who I have had an adult relationship with, which is such a gift to be able to have. She's not just my grandma, she's my bubby. It's like a very different codependent relationship to have with your grandma. But I'm reaching this point where I want to start talking about on stage this really horrible thing that happened, but it feels so technical to try to jump into to talk about a Ponzi scheme, because even in conversation with people, I'll go, oh, this Ponzi scheme happened. And people go, oh, Tupperware. Like they think it's a pyramid scheme.
Like a pyramid scheme or like, MLM or whatever.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I have to be like, no, let me get my white collar crime jacket on and like explain this to you.
Explain the difference.
Because it is different. No, she wasn't duped by Tupperware. She had Marshall's clearance for that. She didn't need a door-to-door salesperson.
Yeah.
And I just think that the concept is so dry in and of itself. A Ponzi scheme is like not sexy. It's just someone, who's...
It's just someone taking money and not doing what they said they were going to do with it.
Exactly. And lying to you and going, I can make you money. And
I know...
It feels like what is happening with crypto right now.
Yeah.
But I don't want to relate it to crypto because I don't know how accessible that is or how long that's going to last in the zeitgeist.
Well, it depends on who you ask.
I know. Don't get me started. Did not tune in for this.
I think I remember, and you may have done research on this, but I think I remember hearing about the original Ponzi scheme from Charlie himself.
Wow.
Which was just him saying that he could change money overseas or something like that. Right. And it was like, if you give me, whatever, $30, I can change the money with a different country and come back with, 3 times the money and give you whatever the profits. And then he just didn't do that and just kept telling people that he was, going to make trips and do this. And he just never did it and kept all the money and used it to just like, and then all the money was gone. Right? Is that close?
I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding is that it's like within the Ponzi scheme, he's also paying people out. So it's like, you've invested with me and I'm going, great, let me go exchange this money. But then I'm going to someone else going, you invest with me and I hand you back double the money. And you're like, Rachel did it.
Yeah. So that's kind of where somewhat of the pyramid scheme of it gets.
Yes. Yeah. It is in the,
but you're not recruiting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not recruiting like, month over month of like,
it's just making sure you have enough new people to pay some people so they don't think you're completely crooked.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's how this started to fall apart, is that one of the people who was in the pool of investors said, okay, I'm ready to withdraw my money. And that's when it all fell apart.
Where was your grandma in the hierarchy of everything? If she was investing with this woman, I don't even want to use that word. If she was getting bilked by this woman for 30 years.
Or, I mean, it must have been early on. My grandma knew Carol because Carol moved into her apartment complex that she owned with my grandpa in Anaheim. And Carol was like a couple years older than my mom. So my grandma knew Carol before she was even a CPA, which is how I think she even got, tipped off to the idea of like, oh, I can tell people I'll invest on their behalf and that I'm investing in, stocks of some sort. So a long time, if not, the first, second or third.
It's like, I know personally, like, I don't know anything about stocks. I don't know anything about investing. I would be the easiest target. If anybody told me, like, if I had money to invest and like I could get duped by anybody. They would just be like, oh yeah, we're putting it in this, and this. And I would just trust them. Sure. And that's like probably why it's not why I don't do it. It's
no, but I mean, I think that kind of barrier to entry is why so many people are trusting of someone like Carol, who's like, I'm a CPA. I've worked with these families for so long. She's like a member of the community, like she wasn't just coming around to collect money from my grandma. They also had a relationship where like Carol was at, Jewish holidays or my grandma's birthdays or my grandparents' anniversary party.
I'm getting more and more angry.
We're just all like angry.
Friend, just like being a friend and coming to parties and family functions and stuff, all while just like stealing. Oh man, Carol.
Oh, Carol. It's so shady. My mom even told me at one point that when she was divorcing my dad, Carol offered my mom a place to stay in the interim. So it's, this isn't just like some person being shady, which I think are a lot of Ponzi scheme stories. This is a woman who really duped my family and a lot of other families.
Like so friends and people that she was
people
close
who were
with.
super vulnerable, like people so we learned of everybody else's stories at the trial where people could give their testimony. I don't know what the word is. And there was one other guy who gave testimony about his mom, who was around my grandma's age, who, also grew up during the Depression, worked hard, saved all her money, and then invested it with Carol. And then once money started getting returned to her, he had to sell his house. His sister had to sell his house so they could get their mom care that they needed. And, they put her in a home and it was like 3 days later, she died. There was another woman who gave testimony that she was in this horrific car accident. She got this incredible settlement that was going to help her pay for whatever sort of procedures she knew she was going to need for the rest of her life. She invested all of that money with Carol. And now all that money's gone. It's just like, it's fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like all of these, like, just sad story, like the Bernie Madoff one was all like people's like pensions and like retirement funds and just all like people's lives get ruined. Was Carol targeting like older people? Like that's
I tried to suss that out while I was there, and I don't think that she targeted old people. I think that she just targeted who was closest to her. And because the Ponzi scheme was running for 20 years.
So it's just like someone who sells life insurance. She just starts with friends and family and friends and friends.
Yeah. 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 So it's not that they were old, but they were all in sort of positions of like one family like owned a McDonald's franchise, but they had worked up from being like custodians of a McDonald's. And so, you know, it was like they're on the precipice
of like all of their it is wrapped up in this one kind of business, and it not like rich people who can like afford to be stolen from.
Yeah, right, like, right. And I do.
We all love when rich people get stolen from.
Sure, because who cares? They all had it, and they'll have it again soon.
Yeah. Oh, you stole my painting. It was worth $3 million, and I have 12 of them. You know.
Yeah, I'll get.
That's the kind of stealing we can all get behind.
Right. Yeah. No, these were people. This was like the last bastion of living the American dream. You know, was like these people who got stolen from. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you first find out about it, that something like fishy was going on?
So my grandma would get monthly returns on her investments, quote unquote, from Carol. So at a certain point, those stopped hitting her bank account. And she was like, I don't know where my returns aren't here. So I don't know how I'm going to pay for things. I guess I'll dip into like her like savings.
Okay.
You know, her like cash that she had on hand. And then when she tried to call Carol to go, hey, you know, just checking in, what's going on? Carol was radio silent.
Yeah.
So then it was like, well, what's going on?
Something's happened. Yeah.
And then it was like hearing through the grapevine from other people that they're not hearing from Carol, and oh, she's run away somewhere. You know, it was just like she's gone off the grid.
She's gone.
And then there were more rumors about her being investigated for something. So it all kind of started there. And then we got letters from the Department of Justice, like officially stating that Carol Peterson's being investigated for running a Ponzi scheme. Oh. And if you're receiving this letter, you should call the DOJ to register as a victim of the crime so that they can have an accurate list of, you know, the amount of people affected. Mm-hmm. So that was about between like my grandma noticing that her, that the money wasn't showing up to getting the letters in the mail. I'd say it was like 6 or 7 months of true hand wringing of just, you know, like how does Bubby pay for things? You know, of course, it's like my mom is, you know, supposed to be getting returns from Carol as well. But my mom is still working. So she's like, okay, we don't have to worry about me right now. We just need to focus on and how to, you know, it's like triage, like how do we handle this situation?
Take care of the most important things first. And and you have to like put yourself on the back burner while you like, and then realize it's eventually going to come and like affect you, you know, but it's affecting somebody else more right now.
Well, there was a moment where I was like, am I moving into my grandma's house? Like how, you know, like what's the severity of this? Like what kind of moves do we need to be making? And that was very confusing to me as far as like, how do I be of help? You know, I'm making enough money to support myself. I don't know that, you know, if I give my grandma a couple $100 at the end of the month,
how that,
like, you know, like who is that helping or hurting more?
Yeah. How did she take it when she first heard or like got the letter from the DOJ? Was she like in denial? Would she, you know?
She was in denial.
Yeah.
I think my whole family was in denial.
I was going to say, what about like you and your mom? Were like you also in denial that it was like happening to you guys, or was there like at some point like were you like this is happening and I have to be the one to like tell my grandmother like no, this is real, she's been lying?
No, I mean that's the thing is there was no telling Bubby what was what. She was going to decide for herself through and through. So I think at first it was a little bit of denial. Certainly for my mom, it was denial, and certainly for me too, just because I, you know, like my interactions with Carol have been so surface level, you know, like I said, like she wasn't like my aunt, but like she was around, and certainly she's been to my house, my grandma's house, but like that's the thing is that you can never look someone in the eye and decide you're the person who's going to steal all of my grandma's money.
There's not many people you would expect less of pulling off some sort of crime than like your grandmother's friend.
Yeah.
Like your dad's friend. Yeah, sure. That guy's a criminal.
Absolutely.
Like, all of my dad's friends are criminals. My grandmother's friends.
No, yeah, not my yeah. My dad's friends who all like work in cars, quote unquote. Yeah, absolutely. Something's up. No, not Carol, who was like very meek, you know. And it's one of those things where I feel like when you're in denial and you're so stunned by what's happening, you're like, but she's just so quiet, you know, like, why would it be her? She would never do this. She's very reserved. She's very this and that.
Well, she was afraid if she talked too much, she would give up the game.
Yeah. There was a point where my grandma was in the hospital because she broke her femur. This is not long after the money stopped showing up in her bank account. And we hadn't heard from Carol. And then Carol walks into her hospital room and we were like, record fully scratched.
That is, yeah.
Because
it was an audacious moment.
Carol came anytime that Bubby was in the hospital. Carol was there to go, hey, what's going on? What does she need? You know, like, like a family member, like, you know, it's like Bubby was like, Carol's like another daughter to me. And then there Carol was showing up. I mean, she sat in the doctor's room with us, with me and my mom and sister when we were making decisions about Bubby's health, because she was, you know, to my grandma at that level of emotional intimacy. And, but that time was so weird because it's like, hey, haven't heard from you in months. Yeah. What's happening with the money?
As someone who's
Bubby needs money to pay for a new femur.
As someone who's never read Shakespeare, I will describe that as Shakespearean. Just someone, just like two people in the same room. One of them knows that they ripped the other off. The other one expects that they have been ripped off by this other person, just like sitting there like, how's your leg?
Right.
Oh, here are some flowers.
Right.
I bought them with money I stole from you and your friends.
Exactly.
Carol. How's Carol living? How's Carol living this whole time? What's she doing with the money? Do you have any idea?
I mean, that's the thing. And, you know, I've said this on stage is that she didn't even, she didn't do anything really impressive with it. Like, I think she bought off her house in Long Beach, which is at least $1 million investment. She sent her sons to college. I don't know that they own homes. Like, she owns a home in Oregon, which I'm like, if you stole $40 million and the best you did was pay off your house in Long Beach and buy one house in Oregon, honey, we need, like, you gotta do something different. At least
trips. There's got to be at least vacations in there. She's got to be going, you know, like,
she never went off to Tahiti. Like, I don't know where she fucking went. Just flights to Oregon. You're spending $40 million on flights to Oregon.
That's not even cool. That would make me feel worse.
Yes, that's why it feels so bad. You shouldn't even do anything good with it. And then at her hearing, she looked horrible. I'm like, get plastic surgery, like, show up, you know, dye your hair at least. She wore this horrible matching sweater set, and I've also tried to talk about this on stage. And maybe once this is a bit more fleshed out, but because I think right now, if I try to get into the meat of this, people are like, this is too sad, and everyone is just like, we're bummed out. But truly, the hideousness of her matching sweater set at her trial would have been offensive to my grandma, who was quite fashionable. You know, like, you're going to tell me you knew my grandma Ann Zane for 30 plus years and you learned nothing about how to style yourself. That's bullshit.
That is, yeah. That's very funny.
But yeah.
That would make her more mad than the fact that she stole money from her, then she stole money and then bought tacky clothing.
And still looked like shit. Yeah.
Her money was used to buy this tacky clothing.
Hard-earned dollars on a cotton polyester blend? No.
I think that's I don't know. I get that like part of my brain like starts like twitching, where it's like, it's just like, oh yeah, just making fun of her as like being just for any possible thing that you can is very funny and like cathartic too, like, you know, like just like shitting on Carol as much as you can,
right? Where it part of me was like, I need to roast her.
Yeah.
Even though she's not
basically.
present and
Yeah.
no one knows what she looks like, but I need to, bring the energy of a roast,
Of a
which is
yeah, just right in the store. Yeah.
am I a roast comic? No. But we're gonna figure it out.
But yeah. What did your grandma think that she was investing in? Just like safe stuff, you know what I mean? Like just stuff that would just, get her these return checks every month. Like, oh, here's your, 3% or whatever,
I think what I was told is that it was high yielding, low risk bonds.
Mm-hmm. Sounds safe.
And why not? When your CPA is telling you.
Yeah. You know who they were low risk to? Carol.
Yeah.
They were most low risk to Carol.
Yeah.
And high yielding. They were both, they were both definitely to her.
Yeah. And I think too, like, like I said, with the like element of trust, and it's your CPA, you're like, yeah, why wouldn't I? And for my grandma and grandpa and mom and whoever else, the first 10 people or so who are seeing the quote unquote benefits of these investments, they're like, great, it works.
Yeah.
No questions asked. My mom quit her job at one point to write a book, so that means money was there, like
it
someone
was coming in a little bit.
Yeah. She could still afford her life, while, pursuing the artist dream. Yeah. God, there was something else we said. And yes, I am taking notes.
Good. I hope there are things to write down. That's, the ultimate goal.
Yeah. But now I can't remember, which is the best part. Right. Yeah. Gotta roast her a little bit.
Yeah.
But getting into the, sorry, do you have a question? Otherwise I'm just
not really. I was just going to ask what else you talk about on stage, like so far when you do get into it.
So in the past, I think I've written like 3 jokes about the Ponzi scheme specifically that will work. I'm not saying they're good, but they will work. And leading up to that is jokes about my grandma, that she's, a very particular woman. She saw the movie Dunkirk and said that it wasn't how she remembered it. Trying to figure out a lot of material about her industrial sized freezer that she kept way too much food inside of.
I remember you talking about that on the show.
I just don't think that I am doing a good job at conveying to the audience how many things were shoved inside this freezer that were like, it's not just like, oh, she's putting a box of Costco taquitos in there. She's wrapping the box in a plastic bag, putting a twisty tie on it. So you also don't know what the box is.
Yeah, it's a
because
surprise.
It's now been bagged, but then she's writing a label to put on it that's like, a fraction of the size of the box. So
it gets frozen over. There's like icicles on it.
That's why she double bags it. So,
yeah.
So it doesn't get frozen over. I mean, so it's material about that, her telling me that she's the only person I know who voted for FDR and Trump. Just really showing the span of her life. And, very callously, I'll say, just kind of jumping right into, before my grandma died, all of her money was stolen from her in a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
And it's just such
it's jarring. It's like a
incredibly jarring, harsh transition. And again, to go from like language we all know and are very comfortable with to talking about a Ponzi scheme, which already has people confused, which I'm then like, do I need to make a joke about what a Ponzi scheme is?
Maybe
in general to convey.
It might, to like help it, and it's also funny to make fun of, like, because if you make fun of the fact that people don't know what a Ponzi scheme is, people in the crowd will laugh. So it sounds like they know what a Ponzi scheme is, but they don't know what a Ponzi. You're making fun of other people who don't know, like you're like, and they're like, yeah, those other people are dumb. Please tell me more of what I already know about Ponzi schemes.
They're like, I love fraudulent money issues. I'm very well versed. Yeah. So
I think it helps. And you're working on this in terms of like you're going to do a one woman show about it, right?
yeah.
So you really have space to breathe.
Oh, plenty of breathing space. Lord
Yeah.
knows.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think.
I say roast the idea of Ponzi schemes, roast Charles Ponzi himself.
Uh-huh. You're saying take it all the way
Just
back.
take it all the way. Yeah. Uh-huh. Get into good old Charlie.
Also, what a great name to then have a scheme named after you.
Yeah, Ponzi.
Yeah.
Like couldn't
I mean,
be
a
better.
Hertzog scheme would be good too.
I guess. Yeah, but it's
A
not
Friedland
as
scheme would be like, wait, how do you spell that? People would go, the Friedman scheme? And I'd have to be like, no, Friedland.
Friedland.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ponzi is good. It's bouncy.
There's a Z in there.
I think the Z helps. Yeah. Uh-huh.
It makes it sexy.
Yeah.
It
Uh-huh.
makes you go, I want part of that.
Yeah. Oh, I want to be Ponzi schemed.
Yeah. Yeah, what kind of sex position is that? Okay. Yeah. I was thinking about like exactly what we're talking about, which is like how to get into talking about a Ponzi scheme and explaining it, or like, do I want to do some sort of act out where I hand people in the audience money and do some sort of physicality kind of thing,
like act it out.
Yeah, which like could be fun, but I'm not a clown, so I don't like. I do think that could be pulled off really well. I just don't
just
think that
not
I
by
have
you
the skill to do it. I mean, maybe I could, and with an hour I certainly have
really stretch
space to fuck around and find out. Well, I mean, it's good because prior to like starting this project, I'm putting in quotations, I've talked about my grandma on stage, so I did have a little bit of material about her going in, and then coupled with some other material that I already have from previously that like fits into the timeline of everything that happened with the Ponzi scheme. It's not going to be that bad as far as like the show that I'm building out. It is just getting to like this heavy part.
So people what kind of questions or misinterpretations do people have of just Ponzi schemes in general when you talk to them about it?
Mostly that it's an MLM.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly that it's an MLM.
It's just because they've watched the documentaries recently.
Yeah,
they've watched
they saw
the ones
the
about
LuLaRoe doc. And,
Uh-huh.
Which is totally fair. And then it's something where I'm like, is it important that I clarify this? Where you're like, do I need to spend time even talking about this thing, or can I just let people trust that they'll figure it out as we go?
Yeah.
And I do also think, because it'll be an hour or however long it will be, I don't think everything needs to, have a fucking horn of a punchline on it. I do think that something like
there can be like waves of parts where you just do get serious and talk about serious things, and
right, some sort of tender moment, because I do still want to I want my grandma to feel really alive in this piece, Aaron. Like I want people to have this like image of her, which I think is hard to do in LA, where people know me or they've seen my grandma on my Instagram. Like maybe you have some sort of familiarity with her already. I want to be able to take this to people who don't know her, who can still get a good idea of like what she was like and her life was like, and kind of what this experience was like without having to know me or know her.
I think you do talk the things that you've said, you talk about her before you get into the Ponzi scheme is like a good, and I don't know, it just makes me think it would be a good place to make fun of the idea that she would get into like an MLM scheme. Like we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, like that's like, everything that you've already said about her kind of proves that that's like not what it would be.
Yeah.
Because it's not the type of person that she was. And,
right.
I can't think of any punchlines for that because I don't know her as well as you do.
I mean, no, that's a really great perspective of like a way to bring that up, which isn't like me spoon feeding, to the audience. Like she was victim of a Ponzi scheme. Here's what a Ponzi scheme is. Really like that. But
Cue
I think
the PowerPoint presentation behind
yeah,
you.
exactly. I'm like, go ahead, drop it down. Prior to like getting into this, at least in the storyboard of my mind and on my wall, which is out of frame, I will be talking about how old my grandma was at this point and what her life looked like at this point, which is like, at 98-year-old, things are hard. You're not getting up off the toilet by yourself. And kind of like we were talking about at the top of the hour, where it's like, in your 90s, it should be the golden days, right? Where it's like no qualms.
Yeah.
No
Everybody
worries.
comes to you. You don't do anything you don't want to do.
Exactly.
You say whatever you want out of your mouth.
Yeah. You let it rip.
Yeah.
Even when your granddaughter doesn't want you to, and you will argue about it. And I think that like our generation, I'll say, a lot of people are just like, I don't know, I'll get old and die. But there's so much that still happens between getting old and dying. And like, I watched my grandma do all of that. And so, there are things, whatever it is that I bring up, I just want to like convey that to people, where it's like, and needing to help my grandma get off the toilet is something that she hated. She would hate that I told you this right now. Like, it was so embarrassing to her to lose your, like free will in that way. Like, you just cannot do anything anymore. She was in denial about her driver's license expiring.
I was just going to say, most people like, can't stand it when they can't drive anymore. Yeah. And like now that's like such a step up from that, totally. Like not being able to, go to get off a toilet by yourself.
Right. Right. And the fact that she was born during the Great Depression, she saved everything. Here's a woman who saves everything. When we were cleaning out her house after she died, we found my uncle's baby teeth. Jesus. In some box.
I mean, that's perfect right there, that she saves everything. And then it was just such an opposite, thing to have happened. It's a good thing you can't invest baby teeth in the stock market.
Oh, but if we could, she would be rich again. Yeah.
How did she, what did your grandmother do? How did
she was a hairdresser.
Yeah.
She was a hairdresser, and I talked to her about it, which was great. It's like very smart to it's a trade. Hairdressing is a trade. I don't think that we look at it like that, because it is also artistry, but it's a recession-proof job. So yeah, she was a hairdresser, and she told me that when she got hired as a teenager at the hair salon, she was just like sweeping up the little hairs and stuff. And she's like, well, all the mistresses would come in, so I'd hear all the gossip, but I was sworn to secrecy. And I was like, that's a great, like, who wouldn't want to work at a hair salon after that?
Yeah.
It's just so juicy. So then she was doing that. And when she and my grandpa moved to Anaheim, they opened a hardware store together, and she was doing like the accounting for them or something. I don't know. She was doing something, but they worked together. And then, they retired. I mean, last bastion of American dream kind of stuff.
Yeah, seriously. Like, open your own store, run it, and retire.
Yeah, I do have a bag of keys under my credenza, which I'm pointing to back here, that I think are from her hardware store, that people brought in as, as like, hey, we've moved, we don't need this key anymore, will you guys recycle it? I think that's what, there's just so many
box
keys
full of keys.
Oh no, it's 2 plastic bags.
Oh yeah.
A box would be too dignified. Bubby was a bag gal for life. It was, so yes, that's what she was doing for work, which was also she had one friend, Bernice, rip, who did not know how to read or write until she was 60.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, which I
it's
think
never too late.
It's never too late. And I was like, that's crazy, because Bernice worked. She had a job. And I asked Bubby, like, how did she have
do you
this
get
job?
by? Yeah.
And Bubby said her husband would come in and clock in and out for her and like write,
Oh, wow.
like whatever needed to be written on her time card.
Mm-hmm.
And I have nothing funny to say about that.
Feels like the husband could have taught her how to do that. Come on. It's sweet of him. I was about to talk about how sweet it was for the husband to go in there and do that every day.
Sure.
But really, how much effort would it have taken to teach her how to write her own name?
Ultimately, it's oppressive.
Just to write one word every day. Yeah, he was doing that to control her. He wasn't doing that because it was sweet. He wanted to make sure that she was there when she said she was supposed to be there.
Absolutely. And he could go fuck off reading whatever he wanted.
God, I can't believe I was going to call that old man sweet for a moment.
No, you know what? You stayed calm. You got all the details.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think even things like that's something I want to write a joke about too, because it's like, which isn't to say that, I guess not every American is literate. I'm getting a little too into the weeds here, but women weren't allowed to read.
Yeah.
It's not okay. But my grandma was very proud of herself for like constantly checking books out of the library. She had a job. She drove herself, which to me always felt like, haha, why are you telling me this? But within the context of you have an adult woman friend who cannot read or write, who could not drive until she was 60. Like, I understand, this means a lot to you.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's probably, she had one close friend that's the story for, and probably knew countless other people who
absolutely
had similar stories. So those things that, like, I don't know, we take advantage of, or take for granted, not take advantage of, take for granted,
taking advantage of reading.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I had the time to take advantage of reading. But yeah, it's just not a given for, people of her generation.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's just so crazy. And I'm in the thick of, I often, I think, talked about my grandma even before she passed, but now especially that she's gone and I'm like very much focusing on this. It's just all Bubby all the time.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Do you have, are you working on this? Is it just kind of like an open, like, I'm working on this one woman show, I'm eventually going to do an hour, or like, do you have like a date or something that you're working towards? Or just
so I have some dates toward the like end of the year, like fall-ish, that I want to run it at least a couple times in front of people to see, like, is this cohesive? Does it make sense? Are you getting a good idea of who she is? Is my story coming across?
Yeah.
And then hopefully next year I would like take it places. I don't really know where, Fringe or,
something
wherever. It's just one of those things where I was like, the pandemic hit and I was like not writing material. And then once I got vaccinated, I was like, well, I want to keep doing stand-up, but what do I want to write about? What feels important to write about? I think a lot of us had that moment of like, well, what am I doing now?
Yeah, especially after not doing it for so long. It's just like, oh, what do I want to talk about now? And like, what seems like worth talking about,
Totally. Yeah. And to me, it's like, I am someone who so far has just written about what is going on in my life, like presently, or like talking about my dad, most notably, and his 4 marriages, which I would love to do a separate show on later, but I'm like, I don't need to talk about dating right now. It just doesn't feel very important to me, and that's fine. And, I'm hoping that having this show or some material about my grandma is like unique enough for, something.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I do think it's special, and no one else is talking about their grandma. So
yeah, and not many people are doing stand-up about Ponzi schemes either,
No, and that's the market that I'm here to corner.
It's just grandmas and Ponzi schemes.
Yeah, a little white-collar crime.
Have you had much contact with any of the other families that were, victimized by
by
old CP?
Old CP.
Wait, her name's CP.
Yeah.
The same as Charles Ponzi.
Oh shit! Oh my God! Why are any of us surprised?
I don't know. It just hit me.
That's the foreshadowing.
Yeah.
It was always there.
Carol Peterson, just a reincarnation of old Charles Ponzi.
Damn, this is he's been reborn.
Yeah.
In the form of this, what's the word I want? I want to say schlepping, schlemazel, I don't know. This meek woman. She doesn't even have a briefcase. Pretend. I bet you he had a briefcase. Probably. I bet you it looked really, really snazzy.
You couldn't have walked in and did a business deal back in those times without a briefcase.
Absolutely
no one would have
not.
trusted you.
You need loud buckles on those things. I wonder if they actually designed a briefcase to have louder buckles to be like, the louder the buckle, the more the business. Yeah.
Just intimidation factor. And like the locks that you have to spin, they click really loudly.
And everyone's like turning their head like, do I want to give this guy my money? It'll be safe in there.
It'll be very safe in that heavy duty briefcase.
It could. That's, it's peacocking, right?
Yeah. You have to act as if, I guess. Yeah. That's what it, yeah.
What was your question initially?
What was my if you've talked to any of the other families or people
right. So no, I think at the trial was when my mom met a lot of the other people who were it was called like a client pool is how she referred to it, which was all the clients.
That's a nice way to.
Sounds relaxing.
Yeah. Oh, client pool.
Dive in the client pool.
Yeah.
I'll chill out in there. Give me a little Mai Tai,
My victim.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was the first time that she met a lot of the other people who were also quote unquote investing with Carol.
Yeah. What's weird, and it's, obviously, I don't even know why I have to say this. It's obviously not your grandmother's fault, but like some of those people, like your grandmother was getting their money.
Yes.
That is like they were all being victimized.
Yes.
And then like the money that your grandmother was getting for some time was like coming from these other people.
It was the McDonald's franchise money. It was the woman who got in the horrific car accident money. It was the other, depression lady money. Yeah. Like not depression lady. She grew up during the Great Depression.
Yes.
That woman is who I'm referencing. Yeah. But yes, it was really, really sad to look around and be like, we've all just spent each other's money and now we're all kind of
any little bit of like daylight that was being faked was coming from these other people. Like
and even more messed up is Carol, when she was starting to be in communication with my grandma after my grandma broke her femur, after Carol was kind of like back on the grid because she was being investigated, kept telling my grandma, you're going to be okay. I'm going to take care of you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Which adds to the confusion of like, well, what's going on? Because we are receiving communication from the Department of Justice, but you're literally saying to our face is something else.
Yeah. What happened with the trial?
The trial happens, I hear all the testimony. They read out the families who are getting restitution, which is like up in the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands for some people.
For each family, yeah.
For not even for each family, just for whoever they had like physical records of. So Carol would print bank statements to show Bubby and my mom as far as like, look at how much money your money's making, but those were all fake.
They were fake, yeah.
So there's no real like, here's how much money you were giving in, here's how much money you were getting out. They were all faked. So some families got restitution, and then Carol's sentenced to jail for 5 to 7 years. She cannot like run a company, like a CPA company again, and she can't work as a CPA, barred as working from a CPA for the rest of her life. That's it.
Yeah.
And that was 2019.
Did she end up like, I don't know, like, did she lose like her house in Oregon or anything? I don't know. Like what? I
don't really know what happened to her.
Yeah, like a seizure of assets or anything. Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. I don't recall. I mean, maybe they were liquidated as a way to help pay back.
I was gonna say, because like if you if she was able to pay back people, it's like she still has money, right? Like that's what
Sure,
it seems
some
like to
sort of money.
me.
Yeah.
Like if you're able to actually pay restitution on those crimes, then like you're holding money somewhere still.
Right. Right. Well, so
Because
then
most of the time when people are like, when people have to pay that, like the victims end up getting like fucked over again because the money's gone. Like they, just blew it on whatever.
yeah.
Right. I don't know. Did I say most of the time? I don't know. That's what I hear. I'm
Yeah.
not a
Well,
crime statistician.
it kicked off this kind of, not conspiracy theory, but it kicked off this theory of like, well, does she have money like literally buried somewhere at her house in Oregon? Is it literally buried somewhere in her backyard in Long Beach? Because, statistically, people who run Ponzi schemes are holding cash somewhere because they know that it's going to fail at some
and they
point,
can't
and they
do anything with it.
exactly. Yeah. So, there was that theory, but it's like, if there is money in the ground somewhere, she's the only one who knows where it is. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then she wrote a letter to my grandma apologizing. Carol did when she was in jail. But it was a non-apology where she's like, I hope you can see why I did this to help protect you. Yeah.
Why could you? Nobody could see why you did. Oh, come on, Carol. I hope I can see what I stole your money so someone else wouldn't steal your money. I was protecting you from other worse criminals.
Would love to have it spelled out how she was protecting my grandma.
Yeah, what was she protecting her from? See, this is a lady. She has no respect. She doesn't think that she just thought your grandma. She saw your grandma as a victim. She saw your grandma as somebody who she could write a little letter to and like it would make her feel better about it. And it's just like,
I think she wrote her twice. And it really, I mean, my grandma was so, it would like make her sick.
Yeah.
Because she was so betrayed that I, at one point, told my mom, like, can we call this detention center and tell them, like, no communication?
Yeah.
It's so fucked. So, it's also, as I'm like coming up with ideas, I'm like, what is important to tell people? Because it all feels so important to tell, like every single detail of the story feels very important for me to tell, but not all of it is maybe necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's another thing I get really tripped up on as I'm writing, for the show.
Yeah.
And there's even jokes that I've done, like, on Friendship Buddies the other week where I'm like, just cut that one. Like, it's just not necessary, for the sake of just being like, but it's a punchline. It's like, well, it's not doing
it's not
anything.
Pertinent to anything. Yeah. I don't know. I think the more people you talk about this too, just in general, just having conversations with, you'll see what the questions are that people have about it. And that will show you where people are most curious.
Yeah.
Because like, I'd like to say that like, I hope that the questions that I asked over this like past hour, like have given you a little bit of idea of like what I'm most curious about, but I'm like an idiot and I my brain probably doesn't work the same way as that. So I like on one hand, I want to be like, so that's where you should focus, but it's probably have this conversation.
Here's what's funny to me is that you're like, I'm an idiot, but I know Charles Ponzi. We're like, no.
I literally think I heard it on another podcast, like somebody like talking about like the origins of the Ponzi scheme.
Perfect. Well,
and those are the type of things that stick into my brain.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's what makes your brain so beautiful and special.
Well, yeah, it can be described as both of those words.
No, it was great. Thank you for asking such great prompting questions. It is it's very good to think about from somebody else's perspective who hasn't heard the story, where I think too we get so caught up in our own bits, where you're like, no, this is how I am writing this joke. And there's no other way that it can go. I get so stuck in that all the time.
Yeah. To know what someone else is thinking when you're telling the story, or like to know what seems like a hole in someone else's brain when that's all filled in your own brain is like pretty powerful, I think, and a good tool for like rewriting and like figuring out what to focus on. Yeah. Which is, one of the reasons why I like doing this show.
It's wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
This show production, this podcast.
Yes, you have the nice headphones on.
Do you is there anything else that like, I don't know, we haven't touched on, we haven't like talked about, anything that you want to like, I don't know, wrap up just this discussion now with, for people listening, or for me, like, like I don't know, a fact about your grandma. What I mean?
I want to leave you on a cliffhanger, which will be how the show is going to end, which I'm going to restrict questions only because I haven't jumped into this part of the story yet, but I do think it's really fun. So it's very sad that my family got no restitution after they lost all their money in a Ponzi scheme.
Yes.
Horrible.
Agree.
The day after my grandma dies, my mom sits me and my sister down and she goes, "There is a family secret that I'm supposed to tell you."
Whoa.
Yeah.
That like, it was like, you cannot tell anyone until after I'm gone. Your grandma.
Precisely.
Your grandma said. Okay.
Precisely.
Whoa.
So what we find out is that my grandma had an affair. My Bubby had an affair.
Bubby.
She was married to a man for almost 20 years, I think. Had an affair. And that affair is how my mother came into this earth.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How long did your mom know?
My mom found out 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So when my mom was 50 and my grandma was 90.
You're not supposed to say that.
Shh, no one did that. This is going on the bonus.
I'm going to bleep it out.
This is on the Patreon, right?
No, this is public.
I'm just kidding. Bleep it out, but then do the uncensored version on the Patreon. Get that money. When my mom was 50 and my grandma
find out the true age.
You know what? I'll start my own Patreon. It's just me telling my mom.
Just telling your mom's age.
Oh, she'd hate that. But my mom was like, "Hey, the timeline of your husband leaving you, my mom watched her father walk out on her and my grandma. And that, of course, scarred her for life, abandonment issues for life." She goes, "The timeline of everything happening doesn't make sense. Because when he walked out and left, he then married another woman and adopted a child. And my uncle, my mom's brother, is also adopted."
Okay.
So how does homeboy go from one adoption,
10
years into a marriage, 7 years later,
Bubby
pops out a kid, but then 3 years later, he remarries and adopts another kid. And my mom tells me this, that my grandma goes, "Carrie, you ruin everything. Why do you need to ask that?
Why do you have a curious mind?"
To find out where you came from.
So she planned on taking that with her
to the grave.
Yeah.
To the grave. So it was, a real like feat that my mom even figured this out.
Yeah.
And then to have to coax my grandma into talking about it, it took a while. And my mom was like, "You're 90. Like, let's just talk about this. It can't be like this, until you're gone, because you're going to be gone sooner than later." She would live for 10 more years, but so that's where the show is going to end, is me disclosing this family secret that now everyone knows. But certainly giving as many details as I possibly can, because I just think it's such a fun, it's such a fun way to end this whole thing, which is like horrific and sad. But there's this moment of joy where my grandma is stupping Al, a furrier from Boston.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do have more questions, but I will let your show answer them.
Thank you.
Time.
Bring me back in a couple months. I might be ready.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time to talk about this with me. I'm so interested in all of this, and I don't know. I hope my questions and helped kind of point you in some directions.
Yes. Excellent prompting. It really is very helpful.
Awesome. Well, what do you want to plug for people listening?
I want to plug, I suppose, my Instagram account.
Cool.
Rachele Friedland, my Twitter. Keep an eye out for, if you want to come to one of my like early reading showings of this show, please do. The more people there who didn't know my grandma, the better. And I'm hosting a monthly show at the Improv called Gimme Gimme Peach Samba, if you ever want to come.
I'll link to all those things in the description of the show.
Sweet.
And and I'll share it to anyone who's listening.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk this over and for trusting me to ask you questions about it.
Of course.
Oh, thanks again.
Thank you.